Well, greetings everybody and welcome back to the Bond Geek channel with me, your host, the name's Stevens, Henry Stevens. Everybody, how'd you do? Hope you're all well, and today I am joined by the utter legend in the James Bond community, a man who I believe has a sexier voice, believe it or not, than Sean Connery himself. It is, of course, Dutch Bond fan Jerome. Jerome, how are you?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. And that's the first time that's been mentioned about my voice. So thanks
You
a
have
lot.
a beautiful voice, bud. You have a beautiful voice. How you been?
I've been good. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. I saw you've had Calvin Dyson on here as well. So
Yeah, I was very lucky to have him on the channel. It was a really great conversation and an episode I really enjoyed doing, and I can't wait to hopefully work with Calvin again in the future. But Jerome, you have done some of the most amazing videos throughout the years on the James Bond franchise. Your reviews on the James Bond series has been fantastic. I loved your predictions on Bond 26, which is one of the reasons why he's come on the channel here, everybody, to talk about something he talked about there, which we both agree on and find interesting. You've done that great work on the James Bond on Easter eggs, on popular opinions on stuff. It's absolutely amazing. Now, can I just ask, before we get into this, I can't believe it today, but if some people just don't know where to already find you, can you tell everyone where to find you?
to go to Dutch Bond Fan, like you mentioned, youtube.com/Dutch Bond Fan, and all the social medias is Dutch Bond Fan as well. So it's very easy to find me.
I firmly recommend everyone to go check out his channel if you haven't already. It is just, for a Bond fan, you just have to find his channel. It's absolutely amazing. But Jordan, I asked you to come on today for this video, to do this video together, because we've been discussing now for a couple of months, ever since, well, just for a while, basically, since we just started chatting to each other. I've mentioned this idea on my channel a couple of times in the past. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times in the past, about really the road and direction to Bond 26. Specifically, where could we go now? I think it's fair to say a lighter mood. I'm sure you agree. If we're going to go in a full reboot of Bond 26, which obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'd like to mention, obviously, recently, the potential of maybe Christopher Nolan directing, which I did mention in that a potential scoop that I got. Obviously, not sure 100% on that, but it could be interesting to go down that route. But as I said, still fingers crossed about it. And chatting through it the entire time, when it comes to really us discussing about Bond 26, there is this concept of, I say, rebooting the franchise and going back in time. Essentially, a new rebooted timeline take with Bond back in the 60s and continuing the franchise in that way. Can you elaborate just basically from your side of things?
I don't know how likely it is that that's going to happen. To me, it's more of a fantasy. I heard you mention that it could be likely. You seem to be more on top of the rumors and stuff than I am. But my point of view is it could be the right time to do it now, because I think it could be so fresh. I do think it's important that if they do it, they should mention straight away, like, we're doing this for, say, a set trilogy, or we're going to do this for, a couple of movies, and then we're going to jump back maybe back to contemporary Bond movies. But for now, it seems like, especially coming after the Craig movies, to jump back and do something classic, maybe in the style of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., that was also kind of period piece. I think it could really work, especially in the political sensitive climate we seem to be living in today. They could kind of move away from contemporary times, take a break from it. And if they plan it out well for once, say they get Nolan, like you said, say they get Nolan and they make it out just like the Marvel movies do. Like 2024, you're going to get a Bond 26, 26, you're going to get one, and 28, you're going to get one. It's going to be a trilogy, and it's going to be a period piece. If they announce it like that, I think it will get a lot of not just Bond fans, but also non-Bond fans, casual fans interested in revitalizing the franchise.
Now, I 100% agree with basically on everything you've said. And for me, it starts off people talking about, oh yeah, maybe take Bond back in time and whatnot. I was thinking it was a nice idea, but what really cinched me on the idea that it could actually work was actually a film in 2019 that convinced me. it was basically the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. Now, I don't know what everyone else's opinions on the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie is, but I love that film. I thought it was brilliant. And what I really loved about it was that it really told a story of sort of modern day issues and things that were going on. But it just posed it back into the 1970s and gave it a different sort of spin and texture. And to me, that film showed you could do stories about modern day things and modern day issues and stuff and set it in a completely different time zone and it can still work. But Jerome, let me just come back to you here talking about it. We could go back in time to the 1960s. It could be the 70s. It could be the 80s. Heck, you could do a film in the 60s, 70s and 80s. It could work. For me, the two things that really are standout moments for this is basically the different types of stories that you could do. There is a plethora of different stories if you go back in time. A lot of people I know talk about the idea that they would love to see the Moonraker novel turned into a movie. You could do it now like that, so you could tell a story differently. There's such a variety of different stories. The second thing is what everyone forgets is that Bond was a trendsetter back in the 1960s, as you know. He was the meanest, dirtiest hero we'd ever seen. If Bond went back in time, I actually think that it would be a bit of a great change, leading into potentially a new trendsetter for more other franchises to go down that route. How do you feel about that?
Like you just said with me, I completely agree with you on all the things you said here. And you're spot on too, because I really feel like you could still send a message even if it's not set in the present time. You could still, like you said, global warming. You would all kinds of things like love or stuff like that. Bond shouldn't be a love story too much, but I mean, all those themes could be set in whatever time, and you could still send a message to the audience, even if politics are set in a different time zone. It could still be very relevant. I think a lot of older Bond movies to begin with are still relevant today, even if they're like over 20 years old or older. So yeah, that could definitely work. I'm very curious, like what kind of tone would you prefer to go with if so for example, if Nolan did it, I picture like a really film noir kind of Dark Knight almost type of, maybe too dark for Bond. I don't know if it could work. I think with Nolan it could also be, I do feel Bond should be colorful, like fundable, it's set in back then, but it could be like the Man from Uncle, like what they did with that one. So I'm really curious if they do appear to be, what kind of tone would you like to see if they did that?
Okay, first off, I'd like to start talking if Christopher Nolan, and by the way, everybody, I mentioned this many times. It was a source I got. It wasn't for anything like Reddit or Twitter. It was a source I thought from a very reputable place that gave me this information. It could be completely false. I don't know. But back here to say, this source, it could have been a bit of a mixture of things. I do take it with a pinch of salt as well. I wanted to share it with you because I really found it interesting, and I found that it started some great conversations, which, by the way, it has done. I've had a lot of great chats with people on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram about these leaks and the possibility, and it has been really, really great. So yeah, as I was saying, we're talking about the idea of, say, Christopher Nolan. I realise, going back to Nolan, it is a bit of a sort of a mixed bag. Obviously, Tenet was his Hitchcockian sort of sci-fi spy film, and if you use this as a bit of a template with Christopher Nolan, he's going to be very much make the Christopher Nolan James Bond film. But I'm going to say this right now to all of you right now. I believe if Christopher Nolan is directing the next James Bond film, Michael Caine's going to be M. I'm just putting it out there. What do you think?
I've always mentioned that, but he's getting very old though. If it is him,
okay, it would just be amazing even for one film. Michael Caine is M. Yeah. I really do get what you mean. If it was back in the 60s was the decade of expression and colour. It was just, it was the sort of like the rebel decade. And I think the Bond films would generally sort of follow down in that route again. The only thing I will say, and I think this will be different especially, is how they treat and respect women would be greatly improved. Other than that, I think, it would be more like the stuff how, correctly women are treated in films nowadays in the modern times. and stuff like that, but it'd still be James Bond. I really doubt he'll be smoking. I mean, I'm not a smoker myself. I'm never against anyone smoking. I just don't really like it.
I that's a good question though. There's a couple of things here I'm very curious about here. Like smoking is one of them. Would Bond be smoking again in a period piece? I'm not a smoker either. I've never smoked a day in my life, but I do feel it could set into classic Bond. You're right. It's not of these times anymore. To me, it's not necessary. It could work to see more people smoking in that area. But what I'm curious about as well is, should Bond return to sleeping with the Bond girl at the end of the film, or is that still something we're not doing anymore? How do you feel about that?
I think it's okay, personally. Now, I'm speaking as a heterosexual white guy here, and Bond is a womanizer. We know this. I'm very much, everyone, I'm very much a person and supporter of the hashtag Me Too movement. I think it's ridiculous still in this modern day and age that sometimes in some areas of the world that women are treated not equal. It's just stupid and it's just wrong, in my opinion. And there's still jobs out there where women get paid less. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. And I personally believe that in a Bond film, and I need to say, I need to make a movie, sort of a video of this as well. I don't understand why there isn't more female villains in the franchise. As far as I'm concerned, a female in a Bond film does not have to be a Bond girl. She can be a villain. She can be one of the all-time great villains. In my personal belief, a woman can just as much try and take over the world and try and kill Bond as much as Bond can try and kill her. That's just really where I'm at. But, going back, and thinking about that when it comes to, sorry, that was a bit of a sort of, a tangent. Let me just bring it back to here. But let's talk about, say, women of the 60s. As you say, it can be greatly improved. And now, I'm not saying there weren't really great Bond villains in the 60s. Obviously, we had Honor Blackman's Pussy Galore. Now, I think we can both agree she was a real sort of standout character. And I think Fiona Volpe from Thunderball, she was really great as well. So they're really great ones. I still give credit, though, to Ian Fleming's Honey Rider. And basically because, she might have been like a character who's aware of her depth and not like, thing, but she was strong, she was confident, and she did add to the story and actually develop as a character in the novel and in the film Doctor No. In comparison to that, we suppose we could talk about Stacey Sutton's James.
Not. She's the quintessential Bond girl.
Oh my god. Honestly, wasn't it so bad? It really, really was. But I think, as to say, it will be colourful. I think it will be exciting. I think it will have a lot more fun again. And I think, honestly, now is the time. Now, because, going back to 2005, I think that's what we wanted. It was a harder age Bond again. We didn't really think we wanted that a lot of the time. Heck, I'll put my hand up and admit it. When Daniel Craig was announced, I was not a fan of him. I had seen him in the films like Layer Cake, and I've seen him in like Tomb Raider, and he was a good actor, but I didn't really quite see him as James Bond. And I'll tell you this, it was only until the end of the film when he got on those stairs and announced, the name's Bond, James Bond, I finally actually thought, yes, I'm get behind this Bond, you are now James Bond. But yeah, I'd like to draw this conversation out, as I mentioned as well in one of my other points, which was trend setting. As I said, Bond was a trendsetter right at the beginning in the 60s. It was, and I do honestly believe Bond could be a trendsetter again. And I like to put this bit of positive here before we get into some of the more negative things. Obviously, MGM is now owned by Amazon, as you know as well. Now, half of James Bond obviously is owned by Amazon. Amazon has God only knows how much money. I mean, he literally, the head of Amazon, he probably just sleeps on a bed of money or something. It's ever a chance to do. If there was ever a chance to do a Bond period piece, I think now is the time to do it, because a lot of the reason people say that not to do a Bond period is, the lack of funding when it comes to product placement and getting funny there. But This is Amazon. You don't need to, I think, worry about money if Amazon are backing it, really. They're in a financial position where I think, honestly, MGM have been in the best financial position now they've ever been in a long time, where Michael and Braba, they've got literally all the money in the world backing them. They don't need to worry about product placement or stuff as much anymore. They might have a sneaky Amazon logo somewhere secreting the 60s suddenly. I mean, what do you think about that?
That's a good point, because that was going to be one of the biggest argument for the con for why
Okay.
not to do a period piece. I think I've heard Calvin mention this is the biggest argument not to do a period piece, because they were always very reliant on their product placement, weren't they?
Mm.
It needed to be there, and you can't really have Apple computers and stuff like that in a period piece. There could still be product placement, of course, but
Mm.
a lot of the modern products you want to sell, that's out of the question. But it's a good point. That's I can tell you're more informed about this stuff with Amazon. I wouldn't really know if that makes so much of a difference, and the more the money and stuff. But I would hope, if they do a period piece, that the product placement doesn't become an issue. Because I think
Yeah.
that's definitely a good point that Calvin raised, that for some that they that it would be impossible. Creating a period piece is a lot harder than
Mm.
doing a modern day, because you need to get all the cars in the frame, everything, the fashion, every extra always needs to be wearing like clothes from the 50s or 60s, whatever period you set it in. So it's a lot harder, of course. So yeah, it's I hope you are right that it doesn't become too much of an issue if they go down this road.
And yes, perfectly, you transition now into us discussing some of the negative sides of potentially this debate about taking Bond back in time. The thing is basically money. Now, I said it's not just Bond, but unless you have basically the name Avenger in your movie or Star Wars or something, your film should not cost 250 to $300 million to make. I just don't understand it. They've announced that Fast and Furious 10 is going to cost 300 million to make. Film production budgets, again, just for me, is just skyrocketing. It's going crazy, and it shouldn't need to cost this much. Let me put it into context, everybody. Casino Royale and Skyfall are generally considered Daniel Craig's best Bond films, and probably his least expensive ones. Skyfall is only 150 million, so was Casino Royale, compared to like Spectre and Quantum, which were over 200 million plus, and No Time to Die as well, minus the delays and stuff, cost so much. It's one of the things. I think Connery's best films, I don't know about you, Jerome, but they were the cheapest films in his tenure, probably. And to me, I just don't understand why people it's just so exploding in the budgets. Now, I don't know where No Time to Die really fits in my ranking. I know it's probably in the top 10, but I'm not sure exactly where. But in the context of doing a period piece, would it cost more? At the same time, would actually maybe spending a bit less on the budget, having a smaller story set in a period drama, counter that issue? I don't know, but I see money potentially as an issue, but is it actually good to maybe put the money towards a period piece?
I think it would probably, but it's like you said, hopefully. Again, I can't look into their wallet, of course, but hopefully that wouldn't be too much of an issue. And I also think it depends on how creative the director is, and the production designer, and how they deal with their budget, and how they're going to plan on doing it. I mean, it's really hard to say. Like I really have to look into like the budgets of other period pieces. Like I think it should be able to do it relatively cheap. I just hope the product placement doesn't become an issue if they do it. Like my biggest example, like I told you, is The Man from Uncle. I don't know if you've seen that movie, the Henry
Yeah,
Cavill.
no, you're absolutely right. I remember when The Man from Uncle came out, I just really loved it from the get go. I thought it was really cool, really interesting, really different. I loved Henry Cavill as Napoleon Solo. I thought it was great. Obviously, pre that, I've just seen him in like a couple of films like Man of Steel and Solo, but he was terrific. And yes, it did show, as you pointed out, that a period piece spy film can work.
Notice how it's set in the middle of the Cold War, that
Mm.
movie, and notice how it's still kind of relevant, and it has the female villain as well that you just
Exactly.
mentioned, and Henry Cavill kind of does his layer cake type of Bond edition in that movie. I feel like Craig did with that one. Um, yeah, I saw it again recently too. I must have seen it 4 or 5 times, but to me, it's like I would love to see Bond go into something like that, and maybe a bit darker, like or Dark Knight type of
Yeah.
area. But yeah, your question about money, I don't know. I just hope, I can't look into the wall. I just hope product placement doesn't become an issue and the budget can be solved creatively. I mean, I'm sure they're able to get the funds to do it, but it's a matter of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later. Um, how they're going to have to weigh, will the fans perceive this well? I think a lot of fans would love this idea. I also feel there should be a lot of fans who are still against this and would love to see Bond be set in contemporary times like it should be, like it always has been.
Yeah. As you say, the whole thing about Bond has to be relevant and up to date, talk about the world that we live in here and be part of it. I don't disagree. I do agree with it to a point. But as you're saying, it's quite a miracle of our human sort of evolution that we're now entering a norm now, because when we look at films like, like Moonraker done over day, when you had the space station, invisible cars, they were outlandish, but that's now sort of becoming part of the norm. We have that sort of stuff. I mean, like invisible cars, as I just mentioned. And, no one really thinks bat an eyelid about that too much. Quite frankly, now thanks to the green screen, we have kite surfing.
Not his finest hour, was it?
It just gets me every time, everyone. It really gets me every time. Not their finest hour, but you say it was, it's very much of its time. I mean, the other issue I sort of really would love your opinion on this is there's like trends to like the really into our third section now is like doing a period piece, no matter what, it does require a different acting set of skills needed when doing something. Example, if I may, everybody, Daniel Craig has been a great Bond. There's no doubt in that. I think he's really been terrific. It's not my favourite, but he's been great. But he would have not fitted in a period piece whatsoever. I don't think at all. You need a sort of different actor for that. And again, we talked about Man from U.N.C.L.E., Henry Cavill, clearly fitted, so there's a lot of things going on there. I've been thinking about a couple of people myself, like Henry Cavill, again, he's my favourite to be James Bond. I think about that in a non-weird way for a long time. But how do you feel about, because you got to look at the cars and all the technology and other stuff, it will be different. I mean, do you think it could work?
For Bond, Henry Cavill would be my choice as of lately as well. And I'm just going to go back to what you started to say in the beginning. I was the same. I started thinking about doing a period piece somewhere around right after Spectre. I think that I started to think like maybe they could do it now, and I think it must have been after seeing Man from U.N.C.L.E. or something like that along those lines, or probably seeing Kingsman, which wasn't a period piece, but seeing the tone shift back to having more fun with the genre again. Because the Craig movies, we've had so much gritty and dark and serious, and I still think they could do that, but it's time to have some fun again. And Henry Cavill is my top choice at the moment as well, because maybe I'm just basing a lot of what I've seen in Man from U.N.C.L.E., but I really feel he could deliver. He really could. As for other cast members, I really should look it up. I'm not sure. I always feel with Nolan, a good one could be I forgot his name, the guy from Peaky Blinders.
Oh, Cillian Murphy. Yeah,
I could see him like a villain, or like he's like a Le Chiffre type to me, for example. There's so much actors I sometimes thought about that. He should be in a Bond film. Lawrence Fishburne, he always gets to mind. I can see him as an M or something along those lines, or Felix Leiter. Do you have any actors in mind that you would love to see in this sort of movies?
Yeah, honestly, if you have talented actors, I'd love to all of them to do something in it. You know, when it comes to the Bond franchise, I mean, yeah, there are some I really want to be in a Bond film more than others. Like example being, I'd really love to see Kenneth Branagh directing a Bond film or even starring in some capacity. You know, there's so many others, not just, you know, really for Bond, but there are other roles. You know, you got Idris Elba. He'd be a great villain, I think, now. Tom Hardy is another one. You know, again, one of Nolan's favorites. He'd be really great. And this, honestly, the possibilities are endless with actors. I'd love to see in the franchise. But let's now move on to, I think, the big question. You know, the big question that all fans us will be thinking on, and I have to say I'm in two minds of this. I think it'll either go like 0, no, this is terrible when this film comes out, you know, it's not going to work, or people go, yes, I'm really behind it, it's really, really great. As I said, if you could get a big name star and a big name director doing a Bond 26 and it be announced it would be a period piece, and they said it will be all this, would people be interested? Would they have a slight bias affair of it? Would general fans be a fan of it? Would Bond fans really be a part of it? Would they be, no, it has to be set in the modern day era?
I agree. And I think regardless of what they're doing next, usually the next Bond film of a new actor is going to be divisive anyway. You know, because a lot of people will either be on board with the new actor or they won't. Same with us, actually. You know, there's a couple of actors I can think of I wouldn't want to like to see as Bond. I'm sure you have some as well. So I think, yeah, it's they have to go for it if they do. If they do it, go for it all the way and not worry too much about, because fans are going to be divided regardless. If they're going to do a modern day one, they could have a casting of the new Bond that could be very divisive. For example, and I know this is a controversial topic, but I see the possibility of the next Bond actor being someone of color. And I think that's going to be divisive if that happens. And a lot of people would be all for that. A lot of people would be, you know, this is not Fleming, and I wouldn't want to see this. So I think the same with a period piece. You can't please them all. And it's like you said, we're going to have to see after they did it if it's going to work, because I was like you with Daniel Craig when he was announced, you know, Bond, not what was it,
Oh, Bond's not blonde and all
blondbond.com
that
and stuff.
stuff. You know,
I was actually kind of in that boat. I wasn't on those websites, I was a bit too young for that, but I was kind of very skeptical in the beginning. But he blew me away in Casino Royale, and I was like, yeah, I was wrong. This is something I guess I didn't know we need, but we needed it. And it could be the same with a period piece. You know, so it could convince people if they do it. I don't know, but you can't please everyone. I do know that.
yeah, that's for sure. I mean, to say, okay, look, to summarize all the things up that we've been talking here, I think, you know, we've done a really good job, I think, about talking about the pros and the cons of all of this. And we're both very much open to the possibility of it. And there are some negatives that we have mentioned that the fans might be a bit hit and miss. But at the end of the day, we don't really know what's going to happen, do we? It's all speculative. We've been talking about here, so let me just really end it on this. If it were to happen, I mean, at the end of the day, let me ask you this question. Sort of sum up, looking at the pros and the negatives and the audience reaction, how likely do you think it's going to happen on you know, further down the line, as a fan, you know, it's announced Bond 26 is happening, great, you know, it's going to be a period piece. How would you react?
I would be really happy about it, I think, because I think we need something fresh, something that's gonna, you know, spark interest in it again. So like you said, it needs to be a trendsetter again, and I feel this is a way to do it, and also draw in new fans as well, especially if you get someone like Nolan on board. You know, you could have a movie that's simply named 007 or The Blunt Instrument, and just see 007 on a poster with just his back, like a black post, and people would be like, oh man, new Nolan movie, this 007, I'm gonna see this. You know, I've never seen a Bond movie, but I'm gonna see this. So I think we need something to ignite that spark again, to get people into it. So I definitely I definitely would be interested in seeing it. And just before you just mentioned Idris Elba being
Yeah.
could be in the movie. That I started thinking about that. I think it could be a really smart move if they do bring him in, not as the new Bond, because he's obviously been rumored to be the new Bond, but like you said, maybe bring him in as the villain or
Or
as
as Bond's allies, unlimited British talent. Why not use them?
exactly. And
Exactly.
it's like I think with GoldenEye, if I'm not mistaken, Sean Bean was in the
Yeah.
mix to become Bond as well, right? And he obviously did get into Bond, but as 006. So it could be fun to still have Idris Elba in there, but not as Bond. So that could also be maybe a smart move. But yeah, to get back to your question, I would be very happy if they do. And you asked how likely. I don't have the sources you have. So I see it as a very unlikely. Unfortunately, I might sound a bit pessimistic about it, but I see them go to a completely different direction. I just hope they do this. But I think it's under 20% somewhere that this is going to happen. Um, it seems very un-Eon to do it, but that's what. But I hope.
Yeah. And just really to sum up my thoughts on this as well, everyone. I actually really hope that it does happen. I think it could be a really interesting and a really cool idea that people would potentially get behind. If you get some like really big person directing like Christopher Nolan and Henry Cavill starring, I think people would accept the change and really find it interesting and just go along with it. And it could be something new and different, and people will be interested in seeing that, because this is the sort of thing I think people would be interested to see. And I think us Bond fans, we'd really get behind it because it opens up so many more possibilities when it comes to the Bond franchise. But again, I'd like to mention again, we talked about, this potential sort of leak that I got, everybody. I'm a nobody. I've got 600 subscribers on YouTube. Some guy just very nicely came and gave me some potential information, not from something like Twitter or Reddit, which I'm just hoping actually is true. But listen, Jerome, I just want to thank you again for coming on and discussing it. It's been a truly unbelievable pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, and thanks for having me. And hey, you've actually did your collab with Kelvin before I did, so you seem to be really good at bringing in.
I think I got lucky.
Bringing in people. So yeah, no, thanks for having me, and we should do it more often. Definitely.
I'd absolutely love to. I'd love to. I'd also like to recommend everyone definitely go check out Jerome's videos if you haven't already. It is just one of the greatest YouTube channels of all Bond YouTube channels. And as I say, that really ends the discussion here between us two on the idea of Bond going back in time, Bond 2026. But I want to know, everyone, what are your thoughts on it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I want to know. Comment down below and tell me your thoughts and feelings about this. As always, everyone, my name's the Bond Geek, Henry Stevens. Goodbye.